button. There we go. There we go. It's so temperamental. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Have attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, take your notes out. We're going to continue looking at the United States Constitution, Article 2. The executive branch, primarily focusing on the president. And who is the president? Who was the president? Yeah, we got like 45 different past presidents. And who can run for president in 2024?
Right now, anyone, but Trump might not be able to.
Yeah, although I'm still thinking that might end up not, because you need a 2/3 vote to have a conviction after an impeachment. I'm not sure that there will be enough to reach 2/3. It'll be more than a majority. But let me see, the previous presidents who can run for president again? Jimmy Carter can run for president again. Don't think he's going to. Okay. Obama has already, maxed out at 8. George W. Bush maxed out at 8. Bill Clinton maxed out at 8. George H.W. Bush is no longer with us. He had just 4 years. Ronald Reagan had 8. And then, previous presidents are all no longer with us. So, they could. It's that weird thing. You can't, but they won't let you run unless you are eligible to, in that 4-year term, not go over 10 years. No, there's no limit on the number of years you can serve for vice president. Okay? So we're talking about the 22nd Amendment. You know what the 22nd Amendment is? You're like, oh, it's the amendment that came after the 21st and before the 23rd. Uh-huh. Yeah. So you know what the 28th Amendment is? Anna, do you know what the 28th Amendment is? Shh. It's a bit of a trick question. If you don't know what it is, then I don't either. If you don't know what it is, I don't know what it is. You think you know what it is?
Isn't it something like that, like, do what's proper and necessary?
That is the necessary and proper clause, or the elastic clause. That's in Article 1, Section 8. That's the last thing in that. We covered that last time. Is there a 28th Amendment? Anna, is there a 28th Amendment? Nope, we haven't got to a 28th Amendment yet. So I don't know what that would be. Who knows? Yeah?
Can Obama be vice president?
Yes, except, that's a good question. And it's complicated by the fact that one of the things that a vice president really has to be able to do is take over as president in case the president dies. Could Obama take over for Joe Biden? No. Although, here's a scenario. Are you ready? Let's say, you ready? After 2 years and a day of Joe Biden's presidency, he dies, okay? Or he resigns, whatever. He gets real sick and he's like, I'm not going to be president anymore. So let me see. Kamala Harris comes up, and we'll see what the amendment is as far as like replacing the vice president. Could Obama be Kamala Harris's vice president in that less than 2-year remainder time? No question. Of course he could. I don't think he'd want to necessarily, but who knows? You never know these things. But he wouldn't run afoul of that 10-year limit. Because then if Kamala Harris immediately resigned, Obama would take over like the, 11 months, 1 year and 11 months and so forth. And that would put him just under 10 years. Okay? All these interesting hypothetical questions that we're always thrilled to deal with as they come up. Okay? Are you ready to get into the craziness of how it is that we select and choose a president of the United States? Are you ready for this? Are you sure? Because it is kind of weird. It is a little crazy. And it actually got kind of crazy this year. Although there was all kinds of constitutional questions like, what is the role of Congress with respect to selecting a president? And the answer is, not much under most circumstances. That's why Vice President Pence was like, well, when I announce the results of the Electoral College, I can't stop it, which created some real tension between him and President Trump, because President Trump's like, well, you're the vice president, you open it up and you announce it, and you shouldn't have to announce it, and help me out with this, buddy. And Vice President Pence was like, well, I'm getting advice on what the constitutional role is for me as the vice president, and I'm sorry, I don't really have anything more than a ceremonial role. All right? That's why, like, my father-in-law was always, he would half joke and say, I really don't like Santa Claus. No, it does. Because in the morning, the little kids open up presents from Santa Claus. And he gets all the credit. Yeah, my father-in-law is like, yeah, the big fat fellow gets all the credit, and I'm the one that forked out the money to get all these gifts and so forth. Forget that, I'm just, Santa's just a ceremonial. I'm sorry, I hope I haven't, said anything. Did I ruin something? Shh. This was just a totally hypothetical thing, just strictly within the context of that relationship and so forth. Santa will continue delivering presents to you as long as you get your wishes across properly and whatever. Okay? All right. So let's get to this. We're going to look at how a person becomes president of the United States. I'm going to take you through this, all of the weird little details about how it's been done and all the different changes that have come along on the way, and just how it's weird. Our electoral system for choosing a president. Okay? We got the 4-year terms part. I did the 22nd Amendment with a 10-year limit, right? So we got the 22nd Amendment part. Now we're going to look at the election of the president and the vice president and how it works in our country. It's helped that we actually recently went through a presidential election, so I think I'm going to be able to go through this without too much difficulty because you guys were kind of tuned in, right? For example, Vera, how many electoral votes does it take to elect the president of the United States? 2, 7. Correct. Very good. Yeah, 270 votes. 270 electoral votes. Yeah, good job. And it's like, well, how does that work? Well, we got to go back in history. You ready? Put this down. Our system of electing a president is not direct. We vote for members of Congress directly. I think we put this in there as well. Do we have... Look on the back of your packet, the 17th Amendment. I think there was one class. I'm not sure if it was this one. The 17th Amendment, we amended the Constitution back in 1913 to change the system. So instead of indirectly picking senators, in other words, the state legislatures would pick U.S. senators, ever since 1913, we directly vote for senators. But for president and vice president, it's still indirect. And when I say indirect, it means we elect people who then, as their job, elect the president and the vice president. Although most people would look at that and hear what I'm saying and go, no, I'm sure that's not right, Mr. Hansen, because, when I look on the ballot and it's got like Trump's name and Pence, and then you got Biden and Harris, that's what I see on the ballot. I don't know who these other people are that you're talking about, these elector people. Well, they exist. And in fact, that's who you are actually voting for. When you vote in the state of Idaho for president, and in fact, Idaho's got such a small number of electors, I think they actually did put the names on the ballot. If you vote in California, I don't think they put the names of all the electors on the ballot. I don't think so. So on the ballot in Idaho, you had Donald Trump and Mike Pence, president, vice president, and then the name of 4 people. Those are the people who you actually are voting for. Those are the ones running for elector from the state of Idaho. And here's what we know about those 4 people. They support Trump. In fact, who was responsible for putting those 4 people's name on the ballot? Trump. And for Biden's, it would be 4 people who are Idaho Democrats. Does that make sense? That's the way it's been working really since our 3rd presidential election. Okay? The original way they set it up, it was like, well, the people writing the Constitution are like, well, Americans aren't going to know who would be the best president of the United States, blah, 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 but they know who the best people in their state is, so you vote for the best people in your state, and then they get together and they pick the president. Fine. Write this down. The first 2 presidential elections turned out fairly simple. The first 2 presidential elections, 1788, 1792. You had electors elected from all over the country. They got together, and they're like, in those days, you could vote, you had 2 ballots, okay? So you could vote for 2 people, and then whoever got the most would be president, and whoever got the second most would be vice president. That's going to change pretty quick after the 1800 election, because that goes completely south. Who won the first presidential election without really any contest? George Washington, exactly. And who won the second presidential election with any contest? Nope, George Washington. He won the second time. Okay? And in second place, John Adams came in second place. So he was the vice president for like 8 years. Something happened over that first 8 years under our Constitution. People started to form up into groups where they would agree with certain people. Let me see, we'll call those political parties. Write it down. Political parties started to form up in those early years of our country's history. We will get it in a later unit. One of the political parties ultimately is going to be known as like today's Democratic Party. Although to confuse you, guess what they called that political party back in those days? Exactly, they did. They called it the Republican Party. And then they're going to, because it's about a republic. I don't know. I mean, republic is a good thing. And democracy is a good thing too. Yes?
So Joe Biden is a Democrat.
Yes.
And he switched to Republican.
Yes, people do that. They don't do it very often, but that happens sometimes. It basically happens if like somebody doesn't feel real comfortable in the party that they're in, and they're like join another one. But it doesn't happen very often. Yes?
Don't they like do it like where they, don't they, can't they do it just like because it's an opportunity and you have a better chance of doing it?
Maybe, and it depends on the state and the time. Some people have switched parties and they have continued being successful as a political figure. Sometimes it's over.
Aaron Burr do that?
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah. So in the early stages, you had the Democrat, what ultimately became the Democratic Party. The other party was called the Federalist Party. All right, so here's the deal. By the time we get to, let me see, the third election, we had John Adams was elected president of the United States, and he was a Federalist. But you know what? In the fourth election, okay, by the time we got to the fourth election for our country, John Adams only served 4 years. By the time we got to the fourth election for the presidency in 1800, and this shows up in the story, the musical Hamilton. In 1800, there's a division. Those two political parties have coalesced, and now when somebody's voting for president, they're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to vote for you for elector, or you're a good person, and so forth. Now most of the voters in the country are like, I don't care who these people are, who the electors. I just want to know one thing. All they need to tell me is, if I choose you as an elector, are you going to choose who are you going to vote for president? Are you going to choose Adams or Jefferson? That was the first time there was a big contest. Here we go. There we go. George Washington elected president. Okay. And then John Adams got it for one term. And then there was a clear division, and it was Adams versus Jefferson. This is tough because those guys, they were on the same page. They were for, Declaration of Independence and so forth. But after a while, being in power and so forth, they had a big division. They had some big falling out. Eventually, they'll become friends again. But in 1800, man, it was dicey. So in 1800, you had Thomas Jefferson, who was the leading Democrat, and his guy who was supposed to take the position of vice president was Aaron Burr. Okay? I forget who John Adams' person was, but so do you understand that? So ever since those early days, when we vote for president, we don't really care who the electors are. We want to know who they're pledged to support for the president. So it's still indirect, but it's very direct. In fact, a lot of states say, look, if you say you're going to be an elector for Biden or Trump or whatever, you got to stick with that. You can't just go flip-flop and so forth and whatever. And usually the Republicans and Democrats make darn sure that you're not going to get any flip-floppers. They pick, for the Democrats supporting Biden, loyal, hardcore, lifelong Democrats. Same thing on the Republican side. Does that make sense? Faithless elector. And that gets complicated. No, that's different. That's different. Yeah, that's different. So here's what happened in the 1800 election. Something went south, something went bad, and we had to come up with an amendment to fix it, the 12th Amendment. Here's what happened. The ticket of Jefferson and Burr did very well. They got the majority. So all of the electors for Jefferson and Burr voted their 2 ballots, one for Jefferson, one for Burr. Jefferson was intended to be the president, and Burr was intended to be the vice president, but at the end of the day, they both had the same number of votes. And the old way of solving that, which is similar to the new way after 1800, so-called new way, is it goes to the House of Representatives. And that's where things got pretty bad. That's where Burr, kind of sneaky, he's working around, he's maneuvering, he's trying to get Federalists, not his own party, Federalists in the House of Representatives to support him. And I'm going to ask you the question because I think you know the answer. What Federalist, who wasn't a big fan of Jefferson, but he liked Burr even less, said, you know what, I'm a Federalist, and I like Adams, but Adams isn't going to win because he's already lost, so now the House of Representatives has to go one or the other, and I'm going to go with Jefferson because you can't trust Burr. Who was that? What's his name? Alexander Hamilton? Boom! You got that right. And so, was Burr mad about that? What did Burr do? Because he was so mad about it. Yeah, he dueled him. And Hamilton was like, pooh, shot the air, killed no one. I don't know if there was a bird going by, but I don't know. And Burr went, boom, killed Hamilton. So yeah, Burr was his vice president, but eventually Burr is going to go off to some other part outside the United States in infamy. And, write this down, they changed the way they do elections, slightly. It's called the 12th Amendment. Let's go ahead and get into the details of the 12th Amendment. It's not too controversial. It went into effect in 1804, so it's the next time we have a presidential election. It basically is this. You ready? If you're chosen as an elector, instead of getting 2 votes, and you cast them both for president, and whoever comes in first is the president, now you get 1 vote for president and 1 vote for vice president. Do you got that? That's what the 12th Amendment says. Do you guys see that? That's going to be, so on page 2, Janet, you're looking at there, that's going to be, it's a little ways down, I want to say like the 5th bullet point in the president section, section 1. Okay? That one's easier to deal with. That's easier to deal with. All right, so how then is somebody elected president? All right, let's double back here. Oh yeah, here we go. There's the duel. Burr versus Hamilton. Hamilton lost. Yeah. All right, now let's get to how this actually works. Hopefully this will make some sense to you because you actually got to see it kind of play out this time around. This is from 2012. This is a kind of a weird version of the 2016 where they actually show the Electoral College vote for each state, even though the state itself is, like Idaho, is a big state geographically, but when you put it as, commensurate with the number of electoral votes it has, it looks pretty small there. So that actually helps you to see 2016, yeah, that was pretty close, but yeah, Trump won that one. If you go back earlier, you're like, okay, that was the previous one, 2012. It looks like Romney's doing really well because there's a lot of red, but Romney only had 206 electoral votes. The biggest state he had was Texas, but he lost some other big states, which may be smaller physically, but had a lot of electoral votes, yeah. Yeah, he did. I think I've got that one here. Yeah, 306 votes. So yeah, ironically, the number, when you add up all the different numbers from different parts of the country, it ended up being a 306 thing. All right, so let's back it up here. In order to become elected president of the United States, as Vera pointed out, you need 270 electoral votes, also known as a majority of the Electoral College. Got that? Write that down. That's the basics. Same thing for the vice president. To be elected vice president, you need a majority of the electoral votes. And it works out to be 270. Well, how did you get 270? Well, I'll tell you how you get 270. It's out of 538. Well, how'd you get 538? Here's how we figure out the total number of electoral votes for the country. You ready? Start with the number of seats in the House of Representatives. How many seats is that in their House of Representatives? Close. 435. Add 100, and then add the District of Columbia as though it were a state. 3. Okay? Every state starts off with a number of electoral votes equal to like its population size. And that's where the House of Representatives numbers comes in. So Idaho, how many representatives do we have in Idaho? How many representatives in the House of Representatives do we have from Idaho? 2. Okay? What about Wyoming? They have 1. Yeah, you can't have less than 1. Every state then, add 2. Every state, add 2. You start out with a number of House of Representative seats, and then add 2. So it's kind of like with the Senate. So Idaho goes from 2 up to 4. Woohoo! We got 4. That's like doubling it. California starts out with, in this one, let me see if it's gone up. Yes, 53 seats. And then they went up to, let me see if, whoops. No. Did they end up going up 1? Anyway, I forget what the number was on the sheet. Anyway, let's just consider it 2012. So let's say back in 2012, I can't remember if they went up for the 2020. I don't think they did. For the 2012, 53 House seats plus 2 goes up to 55. Just so you understand this, because I want to write this down, because there's some people that are like, understandably, look at the Electoral College system and go, man, that's messed up. That's crazy. That's not fair. We should get rid of it. La, 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 la. And if you get to the point where you're like, man, the Electoral College system is messed up, we ought to get rid of it. Ava, do you think the Electoral College system is messed up and we ought to get rid of it? No, maybe. I don't know. If we did, what would it take? Would we have to amend the Constitution? Yes. And what would it take to amend the Constitution under most circumstances? How many constitutional amendment proposal in the House and Senate? And what would be required in the House and Senate? Not unanimous. 2/3, yep, for the House and 2/3 for the Senate. And then what percentage of the states, or what fraction of the states would have to go along with it to ratify it? 3/4. Okay? Is that easy to do? No. How often does that happen in our country's history? 27 times. Not 28, not yet. Okay? And actually, when I was your age, I've told you about being a page. One of the things I actually debated on in that summer, when I was a page, that I got to listen to, was a proposal to get rid of the Electoral College and do something like a direct vote. Like everyone votes, and then we add them up all over the country, and whoever has the most wins. Because in 2016, if we just did that, who would have won in the 2016 election? Hillary Clinton, yeah, because she had the most direct votes. But we don't do it that way. Put this down because I want to make sure you have this. The system we have favors the small states. And when I say the small states with less population, less big cities, tend to support, by and large, a little bit more Republicans. A little bit. Okay? A little bit. Because if you're a small rural, you tend to be a little bit more supportive of Republican. And notice how this works. Everyone starts out with a number of electors based on their population. Every state then gets to add 2. Is it a big increase in California's voting impact to add 2? No, it's a very small percentage. Is it a big increase to add 2 to Wyoming and Montana and North Dakota and South Dakota? Yeah, so the small states, when you just add 2 to all of them, it starts to build up over a period of time, and in a close election, like 2016, you could have the Democrat winning the popular vote, Hillary Clinton, but the Republican winning the electoral vote. And who's the winner? Electoral vote or popular vote? Thank you very much. Electoral vote, yes.
So for the District of Columbia, did they just do a popular vote then just like disapprove it?
Listen very carefully. In each of the states, they do a popular vote in that state. Write this down. There'll be 2 exceptions, Maine and Nebraska. District of Columbia, Idaho, California, every other state except for Maine and Nebraska. Whoever wins in that state gets all of the electoral vote. That's why, like some states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, those were pretty high stakes states because if it had gone just a little bit the other way, you would have had a different outcome. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Are you guys following it all so far? Okay, good. Yes?
Who won the popular vote this election?
Biden did. Yeah, Biden and Hillary Clinton tended to get a lot of votes in California, way more than was necessary. Which is fine. There's no contest. Nobody's surprised about that. But you start racking up all these massive vote tallies. Popular vote doesn't mean. What you really need to do if you're running for president of the United States is you need to make sure you do well in a lot of places. Okay? I don't know about that. You'd have to look at the things and so forth. I mean, if you look at the state itself, there's some rural areas that don't have many people, and I wouldn't be surprised if those went for Trump. But if you look at the high concentrated population areas around San Francisco, Los Angeles, and so forth, those are still very much Democratic. Okay? All right, now, there we go. There's the result. Let's get to, here we go. Winner take all except for Nebraska and Maine. We'll explain how this works. Some of you guys will recall, because some of you guys actually, didn't one of you guys get all of them right? Raise your hand if you got them all right. Wait, no, you got almost all of them right. I was thinking that there was a junior. They got them all right. Some of you guys did very, very well. Okay? This is one of the states where instead of having winner take all for the entire state of Nebraska, they break it into 3 different parts, the congressional districts. They basically sort of were like, okay, well, we're not going to be winner take all. We're going to just, So the 2nd congressional district in 2000, this is 2008 actually, and it happened again this year. This area around Lincoln, Nebraska, the University of Nebraska, ended up going Democrat. So Obama, in this situation, it was Biden, got the 1 electoral vote for that place. 3rd and 1st congressional districts went for the Republicans, so they each picked up 1, and then the remaining 2 went to whoever did best in the entire state. Does that make sense? That's how Nebraska does it. Make sure you put this down. Each state gets to decide how they do it. And most states, well, 48 states and the District of Columbia, have decided to make it winner take all. Got it? Colorado looked at maybe doing it a little different, and then they're like, no, because they would probably be split every time. Denver would be Democrat, and then some of the outlying regions, more Republican, would split that way. So now they make it a high stakes. Same with Maine. There's the 1st congressional district. I think that one tends to be a little bit more Democrat, and then the 2nd congressional district tends to be a little bit more Republican. Got it? I don't think so. All right. Now, let's see. Do we have the? Let's go into the what. I don't think I've got a good slide for what would happen if. Well, here it's actually easy. Majority in most presidential elections, one political party is the majority, the other party is not. Is it possible for there to be a tie? You can write this down, 269 to 269. If there was a tie, that means no majority. Let's go ahead and tell you what happens next. You ready? The Electoral College does not choose the president or the vice president because it's a tie. Nope. I'll tell you. Hang on. I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. You'll have to listen very carefully. If no candidate gets a majority for president, and don't be surprised, it's also going to be the same thing for the vice president. Here's how it works. You ready? And this hasn't happened since 1926. Long time ago. John Quincy Adams. Okay? Or 1924, excuse me, 1924. 1824. Selecting the 6th president of the United States. There was not a majority selecting the president of the United States. Write it down. It went to the House of Representatives. For the president, it goes to the House of Representatives. For the Senate, it goes to for the vice president, it goes to the Senate. Now, let me give you some details on how that exactly works. Are you ready? For the president, it goes to the House of Representatives. And here is how it's supposed to work. It's a little crazy. You would think every representative gets to vote. Yes, sort of, kind of, but not exactly. Every state delegation gets 1 vote. So Idaho's delegation gets 1 vote. California's delegation gets 1 vote. Ooh, wow, that sort of helps the smaller states. No. There's 50 votes because there's 50 states. And whichever candidate for president gets a majority of the state's votes in among the delegations in the House of Representatives is the President of the United States. What's that? Oh, we'll get there. Okay? Yeah, I mean, if we ever get to that, and we haven't since 1824, if we ever get to that, that's like a constitutional crisis. That's a mess. Because the system that we haven't actually used it since a long, long time ago, and people are going, really? That's kind of a stupid system. Let's change it. For the Senate part, each senator gets a vote for vice president. And who wins? Whoever gets 51 or more. Trust me, there's a lot of different ways it can get messed up. Because, as Anders pointed out, what if, let's say in some of those delegations you have, like 2 Republican congressmen and 2 Democrat congressmen, they vote, it's a tie, there's no vote from that state. So then what happens? That state doesn't cast a vote within Congress. If no candidate for president wins 26 delegations, write this down, the House does not elect a president.
Oh,
They don't elect a president. Plan B didn't work.
Plan B?
Okay, what's Plan C?
popular.
Well, if the Senate had chosen a vice president, then guess who would be acting president? Vice president, exactly, the vice president. Okay? But what if they didn't elect a vice president? I'll see if you know this one. Who gets to be the acting president if that all craziness goes down?
Isn't it,
You think you know?
isn't it like the, highest position like the House?
Yes. What is the highest position in the House?
Oh, I forgot.
Speak now and give me the answer. Speaker, very good, Speaker.
Oh.
So if we had that crazy thing and so forth, then, Nancy Pelosi, if she is the Speaker of the House, and of course, the House has elections every 2 years. So that could change within a 2-year time frame. It's crazy. But probably will not happen, because very rarely do we get to the point where we have like 269 to 269. And even more rarely, let's get to this situation, do we actually have a third party or independent candidate actually on the ballot? Right? Was there a third party on the ballot this time around? There were libertarians, and I think there was a Green Party, and there were some other ones and so forth. I want to say like in Idaho, what was it, like maybe no more than 10 different candidates for president? Oh yeah, I mean, it's not that hard to qualify for the ballot, but do they actually get many votes? No.
Why not?
Well, that's a good question. Because the Republican Party and the Democrat Party seem to be the most popular parties, and they seem to, by their arguments and by the rules they create, elbow out all of the other people. And so they either come in first or second. And in a state, if you come in first, you win that state's electoral votes. Whew. The last time, write this down, 1992, there was a serious contender for president. His name was Ross Perot. He was a Texas billionaire. Yeah, and he ran for president. And he actually got a lot of support. He got enough support that he got invited to the debates. He was in the debates with Bill Clinton, who was running against George H.W. Bush. H.W., W is dad. Look at number 41 right over there. H.W. was running for re-election, right? Another 4-year term. He was not happy at this debate. I remember one time he actually looked at his watch because he's like, this debate sucks. Because who was criticizing him? Clinton and Perot. I mean, that doesn't even seem like a fair fight. Anyway, it was like 2-on-1. Well, how did Perot do? Well, this is the election, right? Look at this. Here's the electoral vote. Bill Clinton got almost 70% of the electoral vote. He won a lot of states. George H.W. Bush won the remaining. But look at this chart right here. This is the popular vote. If you actually looked at the individual vote in each of the different states and so forth, Ross Perot got like almost 19% of the vote. Never came in first anywhere, so he didn't get any electoral votes. But he actually came in second in some states. That's a pretty good contention. We haven't had anything like that since then. Ross Perot was kind of frustrated because he actually said, oh my gosh, people wasted their votes. Here's how it ultimately turned out. There on the far left is the election returns from 1992. These are some charts that the Perot votes showed. If the Perot voters, because they were actually doing pretty well in the polls, if they'd actually voted for who they said was their first choice, then Perot might have gotten 35%. Maybe he would have won some states. But you always hear from people like, don't waste your vote, vote for the Republican or vote for the Democrat. If you don't like either one, then vote for the other guy because, don't vote because you're wasting your vote. And Perot would even say, a bunch of his voters actually stayed home and he might have done even better. Question? Yeah, it is debatable.
What year did Bill Clinton get in his scandal?
That was after the 96 election, so it came out in 97. He ran as an independent. Later, he created a political party called the Reform Party, but it never really, it didn't last very long. It's really hard to, take over. The last time a new political party was formed that actually did well was Abraham Lincoln's political party, the Republicans. And he was the first Republican to win as president of the United States. Before that, the Democrats were contending with the other political party, which had died away. It was called the Whig Party. And the Whig was only around for a short time, and before that, it was the Federalist Party. So it's either been Federalists versus, or the Whig versus the Democrats, and now it's the Republicans versus the Democrats. Got it?
Wait,
Yes.
what is the talk of the Federalist Papers?
Those were arguments that were written at the time of the Constitution to persuade people to support the adoption of the Constitution, to create a stronger federal national government.
Oh,
And Hamilton helped write those along with James Madison and John Jay.
I thought that was the actual Constitution they wrote.
No, well, they did actually work on the Constitution as well. The Federalist Papers were arguments written down to help say, we should adopt the Constitution, and they worked. We adopted the Constitution. 23rd Amendment, you got that in your notes? 23rd Amendment. District of Columbia gets to vote. Woohoo! Since 1961.
That was not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. Not that long ago. All right, now, here are the, actually it's kind of late in the thing. Here are the qualifications. We haven't talked about those before. Let's get to them. How old do you have to be president of the United States? 35, very good. How old do you have to be vice president? Nope. It's the same number, 35. Okay? Do you have to reside in a state? Yes. Do you have to reside in a particular state?
No.
Here's what you need to write down. The president and vice president have to reside in different states.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. It actually came up, it was kind of weird. Number 43, George W. Bush. Anybody know what state he's from? He's from Texas. And his vice president was Dick Cheney, who at the time was also living in Texas and voting in Texas. Is it very hard to change your state residency? No. It's actually pretty easy. Cheney changed his state residency to Wyoming, which is where he was from, and so that took care of that. So that's not a real big impediment. Here's the thing that is controversial. You have to be a natural-born citizen.
How is that complicated?
I'll tell you. It's kind of weird. All right, you have to be a natural-born citizen. Let me make sure I got, because I think there was something else in there. And then I'll try to define what natural-born is. Yes, and you have to have lived in the United States for at least 14 years, okay? So you have to be a natural-born citizen and have lived in the United States for at least 14 years, okay? So, any of you guys, I'm curious, any of you guys U.S. citizens?
No.
Any of you guys U.S. citizens but not born in the United States of America? You became naturalized. Here's you go. Here's the deal. Here, write this down. If you're not born a U.S. citizen, you can't run for president.
So Kamala Harris can run for president.
No, she can. She was born in the United States of America. No. No, it was weird because it came up, the question was like, was Barack Obama born in the United States of America? I was like, yeah, he was born in Hawaii. And there was all this rumors and so forth that maybe he was born in Indonesia. I'm like, no, he lived there for a while with his family and so forth. But no, he was born in Hawaii, which last I checked, Hawaii is a U.S. state. Yeah, there you go. It's part of America. But this is the weird thing. They put that in there, and so, you know, you have to be born in the United States of America. This is where Hamilton, I think, actually would not have been able to run for president. So I think that actually the musical got it wrong. He was born in Jamaica, which was British territory at the time. So you have to be natural born.
I thought it was the Reynolds candidate, but
That's another thing, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that complicated it. But like, if you want to be born, if you want to run for president, you have to be born in the United States of America. Well, it gets complicated because what if, like, your parents are working, say, for the United States military and they're stationed in Germany? Are you a United States citizen? Yes. But are you natural born United States citizen if you're born in, say, a German hospital?
no.
No. I know, that's kind of messed up, isn't it?
Wait,
This is one of the ones, I mean, I try to stay neutral on stuff like that. I'm like, seriously, maybe we should, like, change that. Because if you're a U.S. citizen at the time of birth, or maybe even if you become a U.S. citizen after, you know, been here for a while, and you go through the qualifications, take the civics exam, you know, what the heck? Let the people vote for you for president. I know. They shouldn't be, because mothers are always told, do not get in an airplane if you're, like, very expectant. I mean, they'll go, ma'am, maybe you should take... Because usually airplanes aren't a very good place to, like, handle, like, birthing things like that. So, yeah, that complicates this situation. Because, you know, normally, for, like, whether you're a U.S. citizen, it depends on what your parents are. I mean, that's it. And if your parents aren't U.S. citizens, but you're actually born in the United States, then you're a U.S. citizen.
so if you're born in a different country and your parents are U.S. citizens or whatever, how did you become that way?
You don't need to become naturalized. Let's understand the difference. Naturalized means you were an immigrant to the country and you took the exam and now you're a U.S. citizen. You went through the whole process, took the oath to the country, etc. If your parents are U.S. citizens, doesn't matter where you are born in the world, you are a U.S. citizen. You understand that? But for purposes of running for president and vice president, you're not natural born.
Well, that makes sense, though.
Makes sense on what?
Like, if you're, well, I mean, you're a U.S. citizen because your parents are, like, reside there, but you're not natural born because you're not actually born.
So the goal behind this, let's add this. The goal behind making it tougher to be a president and having the natural born requirement was, it's kind of like, I don't know if we can really trust those people who became U.S. citizens. We can only trust the ones who were born here. Did any of you guys follow along with that? Any of you guys agree with that? You're like, Anyway, that's the way it is.
Say it again.
Why did they write it the way they did? Instead of, because like if you want to be in the United States Senate, can you be in the U.S. Senate if you weren't like born a U.S. citizen? Yeah, you can be a naturalized citizen. It's like they're saying, we don't trust you to be a U.S. president unless you were born in this country.
Baby didn't die, please.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why they came over. It's a big conspiracy. You're going to do this. Actually, take a look. Over on the wall, John McCain, he ran for president of the United States. His dad was in the Navy. His grandpa was in the Navy, and he was in the Navy. And he was born in Panama Canal Zone, which now is part of Panama again. But at the time he was born there, it was a U.S. territory. So if you're born in U.S. territory, does that count as U.S. natural born? Yeah, the courts have pretty much said, yeah, sure. Because you are a U.S. citizen, natural born in U.S. state or Washington, D.C. or territories, if that's the case. How many of you guys think it's perfect just the way it is? We should keep the natural born limitation. Oh, really? Well, what if you found somebody who's running for president? You're like, you should be president. And then that person said, I'm sorry, Ann, I can't be your president. I was born in Canada. And when my parents moved at my age 1, we came to the United States. I've grown up in the United States. I became a U.S. citizen. I'd really love to help the country out by being your president, but I can't do that. There you go. So, I mean, it's interesting because every once in a while there'll be a leading Democrat, like a Republican, like Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, once upon a time was the governor of California. And people are like, yeah, Republican governor. And people are like, maybe he should be president. But he was born in Austria. So we would have to amend the Constitution to get rid of the natural born limitation, yada, yada, yada. And so who would be against that? Maybe Democrats. There's a Democratic governor, I think there is now, or there was, Democratic governor of Michigan, who, yeah, it's not the current one, it's a previous one. And the people are like, oh, you should be president someday. Well, the Constitution says you can't. What? I don't know. I'm staying with the Austrian accent. You got a problem with that? Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we'll get to the 25th Amendment. That's fun. Next time, disabilities. Yeah, let's get to those ones. Schwarzenegger was Republican. Arnold Schwarzenegger was Republican.
Watch Hamilton.
Go ahead, watch Hamilton.
No, we in class.
We in class. We'll all just get together with popcorn and pistols and watch Alexander Hamilton.